Happiness didn't survive the apocalypse. It was buried with the ones who chose comfort over struggle. Now, only the will to power remains. Myra remembers the taste of dust on her lips. It clings to her tongue as she crouches behind a half-buried slab of concrete, scanning the horizon for any sign of movement. The wind scours the land, lifting thin veils of sand and silt that glimmer under a sun gone too white and harsh. She had grown accustomed to this taste, earth mingled with sweat and the faint copper tang of her own desperation. Every breath scratches at her throat, but she forces herself to swallow, to keep silent, to remain still until she knows it's safe to move again. She is always measuring risk, a shifting shadow, a flicker in the distance, the echo of a voice carried on the wind. In these times, the line between caution and cowardice seems heartbreakingly thin. Survival demands a vigilance that drains her soul, but for now, that need to endure is the only anchor she has. She slips her hand into a small pack strapped tight against her side. Her fingertips brush the edges of a carefully folded cloth. Inside it, there are a few precious seeds, not the legendary ones from any rumored vault, but those gleaned from rare finds over the last few years. Dried husks of vegetables she once tended in the meager plot behind the collapsed barn, small tokens of life she hoped to plant anew if only she could find a place where they might stand a chance. Her father taught her how to save seeds when she was a child, back when the land still offered hints of green. Now, that memory is a flickering promise that keeps her moving. Eventually she stands, scanning the boundless expanse of cracked soil stretching in every direction. Nothing stirs. The sun glowers overhead and her lips crack as she presses them together. Each day she replays a mental litany: find water, find food, rest, repeat. That's the shape of survival. She wonders sometimes if she should dream bigger. She wonders if she's even capable of dreaming at all. The dryness in her mouth is a constant reminder that the world offers no consolation. You must force life to thrive here, or it will recede from you, slip away like water in the desert. She shakes her head to banish these thoughts. Practical tasks come first. And so she trudges onward, toward the place where rumor says an old building stands intact. If it hasn't been looted, maybe there's something there, some remnant from a past that people abandoned. Her boots crunch on brittle stones and the wind howls at the back of her neck. She hates how the wasteland sounds like a wounded animal, always moaning and restless. She hates how easily the emptiness can lull people into believing nothing is worth saving. The hush between the gusts is the worst of all. It carries too much sorrow, and no illusions about what life has become. Yet Myra persists. She leans forward against the wind, step by step, squinting toward a jagged silhouette in the distance. Each movement is a small rebellion. Every step is a refusal to give in. Long before the world turned to dust, Myra's family were farmers. They taught her to coax fragile sprouts from unpromising soil. That was before the land dried and split, before storms of ash battered the fields, and before the roving gangs scavenged or destroyed whatever remained. Now the only farmland left is locked inside her memory. Yet she still remembers how it felt to hold fresh earth in her hands, the scent of green growth, the sense that the world could renew itself with enough patience and care. Her father used to say that nature would never fully give up on life, that as long as there was a seed, hope endured. She wants to believe him, but hope often feels like a luxury that died with the last harvest. She nears the structure she hoped to find, a ruined bunker or a half-buried facility. At first glance, it looks like every other shattered remnant of the old era. Twisted rebar juts like broken bones, and the battered doors hang off rusted hinges. But Myra notices something different, an insignia on the wall and a partially intact seal. She brushes aside a layer of grit to see faint letters spelling out something official. Immediately, her heartbeat quickens. She can't decipher the entire label, but she recognizes some words. Agricultural research seeds. She glances over her shoulder, feeling suddenly exposed in the open. A place like this, with some remnant of research or stored supplies, would be a treasure beyond measure. But it also might be a trap. Others have doubtless come here, searching for anything valuable. She steels herself and moves carefully around a collapsed pillar. In the gloom, she steps over charred debris and the remains of storage crates. Her eyes adjust to the darkness, revealing a corridor that twists downward into an underground passage. The air turns cool, stale with the odor of old chemicals and mold. She treads lightly, not wanting to disturb any precarious debris overhead. Her breath comes shallow, as if even the dust here carries a weight that presses on her chest. Strangely, she feels a small spark of excitement. If there is anything at all down here, anything related to seeds, she might stumble upon the key to transforming her bare existence into something more than a desperate scramble for meager scraps. Room by room, she searches. Rows of shattered glass, lumps of moldy paper, overturned shelves, evidence that time and desperation have already stripped away many resources. But in the back, behind a door wedged half shut by fallen beams, she glimpses a sealed cabinet. The handle resists at first, rusted in place, but she pries it open with a metal rod she keeps strapped to her belt. Inside, something rattles. She peers in and can barely believe her eyes. Canisters labeled with numbers and botanical names she only half recognizes. She gingerly pries one canister open, rummaging through the tiny envelopes inside. Seeds, hundreds, maybe thousands, meticulously labeled. Some are undoubtedly useless by now, but even the possibility of a viable stash sets her heart pounding. She clamps a hand over her mouth to stifle a cry of astonishment. This is more than a meager store. It's a seed vault, a legacy from when scientists believed they could safeguard the genetic potential of future crops. The enormity of the find nearly pins her feet to the floor. A fierce surge of both hope and dread collides in her chest. She thinks of her meager stash, hidden in old tin cans, and how she had guarded them as though they were the last seeds on Earth. But these are enough to start over, to cultivate entire fields or feed communities. If only there were enough arable land, if only there were enough water. The prospect is overwhelming. For a moment, she imagines green fields rolling out across the dusty horizon, imagines fruit-laden vines and rows of golden grains swaying in a gentle wind. But that image collides with reality. The world is a husk of what it once was. Even if the seeds can grow, who would fight for them? How many would come to claim them by force? Her mind flits to the memory of her family, her younger sister Lilia, who is sick and fevers at night. Myra has been scrounging for anything that could help, medicine, vitamins, or just enough nourishment to keep Lilia's body from turning against itself. Is there a cure for the land that's just as battered as the survivors? Can these seeds, or the knowledge within them, heal anything that's already broken? She feels something stirring inside her that's more than just a survival instinct. It's a fierce determination, a longing to defy the slow rot of despair. These seeds aren't merely food. They represent the power to shape the future, even in the face of near-certain ruin. She gathers as many canisters as she can safely carry. It's not easy hauling them out of that dark corridor, nor is it easy pushing aside the fallen beams again without dislodging something catastrophic overhead. The weight of the containers on her back digs into her shoulders, and she's sweating heavily by the time she emerges back into the sunlight. But she feels strangely elated, as though a door to a new possibility has just opened before her. She breathes in the toxic swirl of grit, and for once, the sting in her throat doesn't fully drown her sense of purpose. She can't wait to get back home and sort through these seeds, to see which ones might thrive if given a chance. She pictures Lilia's face when she shows her the canisters. Maybe this is a sign that they can do more than endure. They might reclaim a piece of life. However, she's not foolish. She knows this find changes everything. News will travel. Where there are seeds, there is hope, and also fear, envy, anger. There's a precarious balance among the scattered camps and settlements where people survive by clinging to any scrap of comfort. There's a silent acceptance that no one grows enough to threaten another's territory, that no one draws too much attention. If Myra tries to cultivate these seeds openly, someone will come to destroy her efforts or claim them for themselves. That's the nature of this world. She has heard rumors of a cult that calls itself the Circle of Final Peace, led by a figure known only as the Prophet. They wander from settlement to settlement, preaching that all striving is pointless, that the world is better off relinquishing the burden of life. Some see them as a doomsday cult, others see them as twisted saviors offering release from suffering. Either way, they spread an ideology that frames hope as a cruel delusion. If they discover her stash, she knows exactly what they'll do. They'll burn it all in the name of preserving humanity from further pain. It's a horrifying thought. She trudges across the open plain toward her family's homestead, which remains just barely functional, a cluster of half-standing buildings clinging to a dried-up well. The wind picks up. She feels the canisters shift on her back and tightens the strap. The more she walks, the more she realizes that this find could become a turning point, not just for her family, but for anyone who believes that life is worth preserving. In a land where basic survival is the utmost goal, discovering the means to rebuild is both exhilarating and terrifying. There's a new gravity in her step, and along with it, a dull ache of worry in her belly. She feels as if she's taken a vow she can't break, though no one forced her to do it. She wonders what price she'll pay for this vow. The wind howls behind her as though in warning. When she finally spots the old farmhouse, patched with corrugated metal and sagging on one side, relief washes over her. She stashes the canisters in a hidden trapdoor behind the largest pile of rubble. With her heart still pounding, she takes a moment to compose herself. Then she heads inside to find Lilia. Her sister lies on a makeshift bed of old blankets. Her face is hollowed, but she opens her eyes at Myra's footsteps. They're bloodshot, but a flicker of recognition warms them. "You're back," Lilia murmurs, her voice rough with sickness. Myra kneels by her side, offering water from a scuffed canteen. There's not much left, so she carefully measures each swallow. Lilia's breathing steadies. Any luck? Myra takes a moment before answering. The temptation to reveal the seeds is overwhelming, but she fears that even talking about them openly is a risk. The walls here are thin, and desperate ears might be lurking beyond, yet she can't hide the surge of optimism. "A bit," she says quietly. "I found something that could help us. We just have to be careful." Lilia tries to smile, though it's more of a grimace. I trust you, she whispers, closing her eyes again, surrendering to rest. Myra wonders if Lilia is simply too weak to argue or if she truly has that much faith in her. Either way, the resolve in Myra's chest grows. She will protect these seeds, protect her sister, and find a way to bring life back to this barren land, even if it means painting a target on her own back. Night falls quickly and the chill sets in. Myra steps outside, gazing at the starless sky. The air is too thick with dust to see more than a faint glow where the moon should be. She thinks about the prophet, about what kind of person leads a group dedicated to oblivion. Whispers about him have been traveling through the wasteland. Some say he was once a brilliant scientist or scholar who lost everything when the first cataclysm hit. Now he preaches that the greatest gift to humankind is release from endless striving. People flock to him out of despair, or maybe a twisted curiosity about whether he holds the key to an easier way. Myra has witnessed the aftermath of his sermons, camps that decide to cease all efforts, letting their supplies dwindle until they drift into a kind of communal starve, as though they want to slip away from reality with minimal fuss. Others speak of more violent methods, well poisonings, sabotage, the incitement of mass suicides under the banner of final happiness. Myra's hand tightens into a fist at the thought. She can hardly stand the contradiction. How can one spread death in the name of happiness? She hears a sound behind her and whirls around, tension buzzing under her skin. It's Kai, a traveler who's been doing odd jobs around the homestead for some food and a corner of shelter. He's younger than she is, but his face is etched with lines of worry that make him appear older. He lifts a hand in a gesture of peace. "Sorry," he says softly, "didn't mean to startle you." Myra exhales. "It's fine, what is it?" He hesitates, eyes darting toward the boarded-up windows. "Heard talk in the last settlement I visited," he says. "The prophet, on the move, headed this way. He's looking for—" He stops himself, as if he doesn't want to speak the rumors aloud. "Looking for what?" Myra demands, heart pounding. Kai lowers his gaze. "Anything that might challenge his message," he answers at length. "Anything that offers people a reason to hope or fight back." He shifts uncomfortably. "I've seen what his people do to those who won't submit. They torch homes, they do worse to families." Myra regards him in silence. On some instinctive level, she trusts Kai. He has proven himself loyal enough in the small tasks he's done, always returning from his errands with whatever meager supplies he promised to barter. Yet she senses there's more to him than the drifting scavenger he appears to be. Something about the way he speaks of the prophet is personal, tinged with a special dread. "There's a group of them camped nearby," Kai admits. "I don't know how big, but they've been sending out scouts, maybe to recruit new followers or sniff out threats. I fear they might have heard whispers of your family's attempts to grow something out here." Myra's entire body tenses. She glances at the collapsed barn, behind which she has a small hidden plot. It's hardly a garden, just a few stunted plants clinging to life, but if the cult catches wind of the seeds she just brought home, no, that would be disastrous. "Let them come," she says fiercely, though she knows how hollow it sounds. She can't fend off a coordinated group, not with her sister sick and only Kai for occasional support. Kai shakes his head. "It's not so simple. These people are bent on destroying any sign of renewal. They see it as delusion or an insult to their creed." His voice wavers. "You should hide anything valuable, and you should consider leaving if the threat grows too large." Myra says nothing. The idea of abandoning her family's homestead, where so many memories are planted as deeply as any seed, sickens her. Yet she can't ignore the danger. She swallows hard and meets Kai's eyes. "I can't run. I found—" She pauses, then decides to trust him. "I found something that might let us rebuild in a bigger way than we ever thought possible. I can't just walk away from that." Kai's breath catches. She can see a flicker of something in his gaze, admiration mixed with fear. "If that's true, you're a target," he says quietly. "The prophet preaches that suffering is the only certainty, that to prolong life is to prolong agony. He's convinced people to see peace in extinction. Anything that contradicts that message is a threat." Myra lets that settle for a moment. She can hear the wind rattling the loose boards of the house behind her, and in the distance, a coyote howls. "I won't surrender these seeds," she declares at last. "And I won't surrender Lilia's life or mine to their twisted beliefs." Kai nods as though he expected no less. He takes a step back, respect evident in his posture. "I'll help however I can," he murmurs before heading back inside. Myra watches him go, uncertain how much faith she can place in him, but too weary to question it right now. The night deepens. She stands a while longer, feeling the weight of her new responsibility grow heavier than the canisters she carried out of that bunker. In the days that follow, Myra tries to go about her routine, but the vault of seeds haunts her thoughts. Each morning she checks on Lilia. The fever waxes and wanes, and sometimes her sister stares at her with a mixture of gratitude and apology, as though Lilia hates the burden she's become. Myra presses a hand to her sister's brow, promising that she's close to a solution, reminding her to hold on a little longer. Then Myra sneaks out to the hidden plot near the barn, carefully sowing a few seeds from her older stash in rows. She waters them with the precious reserves she collects from dew traps overnight. The labor is tedious, and every droplet of water feels like a sacrifice. Yet each day that the tiny shoots remain green feels like a victory. The presence of the prophet's followers grows more palpable in the region. Strangers drift through the edges of the farmland, sometimes bold enough to question passers-by. Myra hears whispers that a charismatic figure with a commanding voice has been seen near the central trading outpost. He wears tattered robes and speaks of a grand release, an end to all suffering, promising a kind of twisted salvation. Some claim he once was a brilliant mind who tried to save the environment and humanity through radical experimentation, only to watch everything collapse into dust. Now, he channels that heartbreak into a sermon of hopelessness, a call for humanity to embrace its own disappearance. The rumor is that entire settlements have opened their gates to him, inviting his retinue in with the same docile acceptance one might show a traveling preacher. Once inside, his followers break wells, burn supplies, and urge people to embrace peace, which in practice means giving up on life entirely. Myra's stomach churns whenever she hears these stories. She can't decide if she's more angered by his cruelty or the gullibility of those who comply. She tries to imagine how someone could find comfort in the idea of vanishing, in discarding every bit of will to survive. Then she thinks of the days she spent cold, hungry, and frightened, not knowing if she'll find enough water to last another week. Perhaps in that desperation, the prophet's words sound like a release from endless despair. She can't deny that the notion of leaving all cares behind might feel tempting, yet she finds herself repulsed by the finality of it. She remembers her father's lessons about working the land. It was always a struggle, always uncertain, but it was a struggle that gave meaning to existence. The fruit, the harvest, came from persistence through hardship. To abandon that is to abandon the essence of life. The seeds she discovered seem to embody that idea on a grand scale. They demand labor, risk, cunning, and faith, and she feels called to that labor, no matter the cost. Late one afternoon, as Myra kneels in her hidden plot, carefully weeding around the small seedlings, she hears footsteps behind her. She startles and spins around, dirt falling from her hands. Standing there is a pair of robed figures. Their expressions are calm, almost serene, yet there's an unsettling gleam in their eyes. One raises a hand in a gentle greeting. "Sister," he begins, voice low and smooth, "we come in peace." Myra scrambles up, heart hammering in her chest. She says nothing, waiting for them to speak first. Her mind races, trying to think of a plausible explanation for why she's tending this patch of green in a place that looks otherwise dead. The second figure steps forward. "We are of the circle of final peace," she says. "We wander, seeking those who yearn for true rest. Our prophet has sent us to deliver his message. There is no reason to prolong struggle, for suffering is unending and pointless. Let go, and you shall find peace." Myra forces an awkward chuckle, hopping to hide her apprehension. "I'm not sure I follow," she replies, keeping her tone light. "This patch of weeds, it's worthless, just something I tend to out of habit." She wants to distract them from her precious sprouts. But the first figure steps closer, glancing at the faint green shoots. His expression remains passive, but there's a flicker of disapproval in his eyes. "You labor here in hope of what? Growth, prosperity. The land is finished, sister. You would save yourself much heartbreak by relinquishing these illusions." Myra swallows hard. "It's not illusions that feed me," she retorts softly. "If I can coax a few greens out of the ground, that might keep me alive." The second figure offers a gentle smile that does nothing to mask the underlying chill in her voice. "Survival, yes," she says. "But for what? A few more days of thirst and hunger, a few more nights of fear. You chain yourself to existence, but existence is only pain. Our prophet teaches that we can step beyond it." A flash of anger flares in Myra's chest, but she tamps it down. She knows that to openly defy them could attract more attention. "Your prophet might be right for some," she concedes carefully, "but I have a sister who needs me, and that's enough reason to keep going." They exchange a knowing look, as though they see in her words the attachment they deem so pathetic. The first figure inclines his head. "We understand the burdens of family," he says. "We too have left behind loved ones to embrace the greater peace. Our community welcomes all who tire of the fight. When you tire of yours, you may seek us." Without another word, they turn and walk away, robes dragging in the dirt. Myra watches them go, heart pounding. She doesn't doubt that they'll report her meager garden back to their leader. The prophet's brand of nihilism leaves little room for anyone who insists on growth. She tries to steady her breathing. In that brief exchange, she sensed not just a spiritual message but an undercurrent of menace. Their quiet departure isn't a sign of acceptance. It's more like a warning: if she persists, they'll be back. That night, Myra can't sleep. She sits by Lilia's bedside, refreshing the cool cloth on her sister's forehead. Lilia's fever rises again, accompanied by muttering. She calls out once for their father, another time for water that Myra struggles to provide in sufficient quantity. It breaks Myra's heart. She wonders if she should have pressed the travelers in the last settlement for medicine, or if such a thing even exists anymore. The seeds in her trapdoor suddenly feel inadequate. Even if she can grow new crops, how will she ensure that Lilia makes it that far? Kai finds her in the morning, dark circles under her eyes, rummaging through the small supply closet for anything that might help reduce Lilia's fever. He leans against the doorframe, arms folded. They came, he says, not needing to name who he's talking about. Myra nods, too fatigued to be surprised that Kai already knows. Word spreads fast around here. Yes, 2 of them, preaching their piece, wanting me to stop trying, she says, bitterness in her tone. Kai sighs. They'll keep coming, they have a network. If they sense you're defiant, they'll escalate. He steps closer, letting his voice drop so that Lilia can't overhear. You need to protect your seeds. If they find out exactly what you have, they won't hesitate. Myra sets down a tattered cloth she had been turning over in her hands. I know, she mutters. I need a plan, but I can't leave Lilia, and I can't abandon this house or the ground I've tried to make fertile. Kai hesitates, then places a hand on her shoulder. I understand, I'll keep watch. If they come again, maybe I can draw them away or mislead them. His expression darkens. I was with them once, you know. I thought the prophet's words offered a respite from my guilt. When everything else was lost, it felt good to blame existence itself and hope for a grand release. She looks at him sharply. You were a follower, why did you leave? He lowers his gaze. Because I saw what their release really means. Cruelty, destruction of anything that might give hope. They want a clean slate, a world with no more life to suffer. When I realized they would burn everything to achieve that, I fled. There's pain in his voice, and Myra senses that he carries a heavy burden from the things he might have done under the prophet's sway. In that moment, she feels a pang of empathy. I'm sorry, she says, but I'm glad you got out. She stands straighter, squaring her shoulders. I will not let them destroy these seeds. I'm no hero, but I won't let them rob us of a future, however frail. Kai nods, a flicker of determination sparking in his eyes. We'll find a way, he promises. But the next few days bring more tension. Strangers linger on the outskirts, sometimes robed, sometimes in plain ragged clothing. Nighttime footsteps skitter across the debris-littered yard, and Myra wakes to find footprints in the dust where she's certain people have been snooping. She grows more careful, hiding her small plot under camouflage, sprinkling dust and broken bits of metal to mask the presence of anything green. She checks and rechecks her trapdoor to ensure the canisters remain hidden. The anxiety gnaws at her, but she doesn't let it paralyze her. Each day she waters the seeds, each day she sits with Lilia, each day she steels herself for the confrontation she knows is coming. The prophet arrives at dusk, though Myra doesn't realize who he is at first. She only senses the hush that falls over the air, as though the wind itself holds its breath. A group of robed figures stands at the edge of the property. One steps forward, a tall man with a weathered face, sharp eyes, and a surprisingly gentle demeanor. He carries himself with an assured calm, as though unaffected by the harshness of the wasteland. When he speaks, his voice is clear, resonant. My child, he says, addressing Myra as she stands by the porch. I've heard rumors of your extraordinary perseverance. They say you attempt to coax life from this barren ground. You cling to illusions of growth. Why waste such energy when there's a simpler path to peace? She meets his gaze, trying not to tremble. She suspects who he is, and her suspicion is confirmed by the respectful hush among his followers. I wouldn't call living an illusion, she replies evenly. It's reality, one I'm not ready to abandon. He nods thoughtfully, as if considering her words. Reality is suffering. The old world destroyed itself through arrogance, seeking to dominate nature. Now we pay for that hubris with emptiness and despair. Why repeat the same mistake, trying to master what refuses to yield? Why not embrace the release of letting go? Myra's eyes narrow. She thinks of the seeds of her father's teachings, of Lilia fighting her fever inside the house. Because some of us still believe in the value of struggling, she says. We believe that meaning can emerge from it, that life is worth defending. A faint smile touches the prophet's lips, but there's no warmth in it. I once believed the same, he murmurs. I fought long and hard to save what was left of our ecosystem. But in the end, I saw that no matter how fiercely we try to bend the world to our will, it remains indifferent. Our illusions crumble. I came to see that the truest kindness is to let humanity slip peacefully into the arms of oblivion. Myra feels anger flare in her chest. Is that why your followers sabotage wells, burn fields, and poison supplies? She demands. Is that your idea of a peaceful transition? She notices some of the robed figures stir, as though prepared to defend him from accusations. He lifts a hand, calming them. When we see the extension of suffering, we intervene, he explains, his tone almost gentle. Better a swift severance than a prolonged agony. That is mercy. Mercy, she repeats bitterly. Killing and destruction under the guise of mercy. And what about those who don't want to die? His expression darkens slightly, though he maintains composure. They are tragically misguided, he says. They cling to illusions that will only prolong their torment. I seek to free them, even if they can't see the virtue in it. The standoff intensifies. Myra can feel the tension crackling in the air. She wonders if he's about to give a signal for his followers to attack, to torch the farm and her meager plot. But then, a raspy voice calls from inside the house. Lilia, perhaps sensing the commotion, calls out her sister's name. The prophet's eyes flick toward the sound. "You have family within?" he asks, voice subdued. Myra remains silent. "Another soul caught in the cycle of suffering," he says, more to himself. Then he meets Myra's gaze. "We do not wish to spill blood, child. Think on our offer. Relinquish your illusions, and we will guide you gently into final happiness." Myra's throat constricts with loathing. "That's not happiness," she growls, fists clenched. But the prophet only turns to go, his followers falling into step behind him like a solemn procession. Before he leaves, he glances back once more. His gaze lingers on Myra with an odd mix of pity and curiosity, as if he's assessing whether she'll become his next trophy convert or a stubborn opponent to be crushed. Then they vanish into the twilight. In the wake of his departure, the dread in the air remains. Myra dashes inside and checks on Lilia, who is half awake, delirious. Kai hovers in the corner, having witnessed the exchange from a distance. "He'll come back," Kai says softly. "He never just leaves. He's testing you, seeing if you'll fold. If you keep resisting, he'll take direct action." Myra nods grimly, pressing a damp cloth to Lilia's forehead. She can't imagine how they'll stand against an entire cult. Still, she refuses to renounce her determination. "I won't fold," she whispers, though she's unsure how she'll back it up. She recalls that the seeds she found in the vault represent a power she never fully recognized before. It's a power that's more than just the ability to grow crops. It's the power to redefine what's possible in a dying world. The prophet seems bent on destroying any such possibility. That knowledge stirs in her a fierce resolve. The next day, Myra inspects her garden and notices footprints near the hidden rows. A few seedlings have been uprooted, carelessly tossed aside. Her heart clenches at the sight. It's a small act of sabotage, but it sends a clear message. The cult is watching, and they disapprove of her refusal to comply. She carefully replants what she can, but she knows the damage runs deeper than this handful of seedlings. Kai urges her to be cautious. "We can't face them head-on," he tells her, glancing at her homemade weapons, sharpened metal rods and battered farm tools. "And we can't rely on mercy. They see your determination as a challenge." That night, a muffled scream wakes Myra. She rushes outside to find that a small fire has been lit near the barn. She smothers it quickly with a blanket, but the smell of burning wood and charred plants lingers. Her heart hammers, and she's seized by a sudden fear that the seed stash might have been discovered. She sprints to the trapdoor and checks it. Thankfully, it remains undisturbed. Whoever set the fire didn't find her greatest secret, but she knows it's only a matter of time. As these attacks escalate, a horrifying thought crystallizes in her mind. The cult might try to strike at her biggest vulnerability, Lilia. If they kidnap or harm her sister, Myra might be forced to yield. The possibility sends a surge of panic through her. She realizes that if she wants to protect Lilia and preserve the seeds, she may need to anticipate the cult's next move. She decides to send Kai to gather intel. He might be able to infiltrate or at least linger near the cult's gathering places, given his former ties. It's a dangerous plan, but knowledge is their only real weapon right now. Kai slips away at dawn, and Myra is left to care for Lilia alone. The day drags on intense expectation. She busies herself, checking every corner of the homestead, ensuring that she hasn't missed any hidden watchers. By evening, she's exhausted, but there's still no sign of Kai. She wonders if the cult recognized him and took him captive, or worse, the uncertainty gnaws at her. Lilia's breathing grows labored again, and Myra does what she can to keep her sister comfortable. At some point after midnight, Kai stumbles back, battered and shaking. Myra rushes to him, helps him to a seat. He clutches his side, grimacing in pain. "Their numbers are growing," he says through clenched teeth. "They have more followers than I realized. They're encamped not too far from here in an old industrial site. They talk of a grand demonstration, something that will prove the futility of struggling against them." Myra's mind reels. What sort of demonstration? He shakes his head. "I couldn't get close enough to learn all the details, but I heard something about capturing a defiant individual, making an example. They plan to show everyone what happens to those who won't accept their final peace." A cold sweat breaks over Myra's skin. She fears what might happen if they come for her. She needs a plan. "We have to hide Lilia," she says. "They'll target her if they want leverage." Kai nods in agreement. They decide to move Lilia to a nearby collapsed mineshaft, a place that's relatively hidden and difficult to access. Myra hates the idea of uprooting her sister in her condition, but it seems safer than leaving her in the farmhouse. Under the cover of night, they wrap Lilia in blankets, carry her carefully, and lead a small donkey cart loaded with supplies. The journey is nerve-wracking. Every shifting shadow could be a cult scout. Lilia mumbles feverish protests, but Myra calms her as best she can. At last, they reach the mine. It's dank and the air smells stale, but it's defensible and out of sight. Myra sets up a makeshift sleeping area for Lilia in a hollow near the entrance. She puts fresh water within reach and strokes Lilia's hair, whispering assurances that everything will be all right. Then, steeling herself, she hands Kai a small box. Inside it is a sample of seeds from the stash, just a fraction of the total. If something happens to me, she tells him, take these and go. Find another place to plant them. Don't let the prophet win. Kai hesitates, and what about you? He asks, voice tight. Myra's smile is grim. I'll do whatever I can to keep them occupied, to protect Lilia, protect the rest of the seeds, but I can't guarantee anything. She meets his gaze. Promise me you'll do it if the worst happens. He swallows and nods, stuffing the box into a hidden pocket. The gravity in his eyes tells her he understands the risk. They slip back to the farmhouse, hearts heavy with dread. Myra can't shake the feeling that the confrontation looms closer with every breath, and indeed her fears materialize the next morning when she goes outside to check on the hidden plot. The prophet is there, waiting. His followers stand in a half-circle, blocking her path. They have someone with them, a bound figure with a rag wrapped around their face. At first, Myra assumes it's a local, maybe one who refused to join the cult. Then her blood runs cold when she recognizes the clothing. It's Lilia's. Somehow they found her in the mine. The donkey cart is nowhere in sight. They must have overpowered Kai or gotten the location out of him. Myra wants to scream, but the sound lodges in her throat. Your sister, the prophet says calmly, is in need of mercy, is she not? She clings to a life of suffering, an illness that will only worsen. You've done her no kindness by prolonging that misery. Myra drops to her knees beside the bound figure, ripping away the gag. Lilia's eyes flutter open. Her lips are parched and her skin burns to the touch. She's delirious, but a gasp escapes her when she sees Myra. I'm sorry, she whispers. I tried to fight them. Rage explodes inside Myra, but she fights to keep it in check. She stands, facing the prophet. Let her go, she growls. She isn't part of your twisted demonstration. He tilts his head in mild curiosity. Oh, but she is. You see, she represents all that you cling to. Your illusions of hope and healing, your refusal to accept the final peace. We offer to release her from this agony, and yet you demand she remain in it. He clasps his hands behind his back. I'll make you an offer. If you renounce your attempts at growing food, if you relinquish the seeds you've hidden, we'll spare her. We'll let her die without suffering, a quick end. But if you defy us, we'll prolong her anguish. Myra clenches her teeth. She glances at Lilia, who is barely conscious, likely unaware of the full extent of the threat. Slowly, she meets the prophet's cold gaze. You're insane, she says, voice trembling with fury. You talk about mercy, but all you do is spread murder. He shrugs, as if her words hold no power. Killing and letting die are not so different in a world that is already dead, child. We simply hasten the inevitable. Myra's hand drifts toward the tool belt at her waist, where she keeps a sharpened rod. She imagines plunging it into him, but there are too many followers, each armed with guns or blades. She stands no chance that way. She needs a different angle, something cunning. All right, she says, voice tight. You want the seeds? Fine, let me show you where they are. The prophet raises his eyebrows. His followers shift in anticipation. One of them holds a knife near Lilia's throat, ready to strike if Myra attempts anything. Myra forces a steady breath. She leads them around the collapsed barn, heading toward the trapdoor. Her mind races. She prays that Kai took the majority of the seeds somewhere safe. She wonders if there's a way to save Lilia while sacrificing the seeds, or at least appearing to. She signals with a small hand gesture behind her back. Hopping Kai is hidden somewhere nearby. The prophet follows with a triumphant expression, as if he believes she's finally seen reason. She stops at the trapdoor, kneels, and lifts it open. The cultists peer down into the darkness, eager to see the rumored stash. Indeed, the canisters are there, carefully arranged. Myra sets her jaw, hatting what she's about to do but seeing no alternative. She reaches for a torch lying nearby, an old remnant from the days when her father stored supplies here. The prophet's eyes narrow. What are you doing? He asks. Myra looks him in the eye. I'm depriving you of your leverage. Before he can react, she hurls the torch into the trapdoor. The dry debris inside ignites instantly. Flames roar to life, licking at the canisters. One or two pop from the heat, spewing seeds into the flames. She doesn't know how many are destroyed, but the spectacle is enough. The prophet lets out a shout, stepping back in shock. His followers rush forward, but the fire is already raging, too hot to approach. In the commotion, the knife at Lilia's throat falters as the cultist's attention shifts to the sudden blaze. Myra seizes the opportunity to tackle the cultist, wresting the knife away. A wild struggle ensues, but she manages to free Lilia from the rope binding her ankles. Then she shouts for Kai, hopping he's nearby. He emerges from behind a collapsed beam, charging into the fray. He doesn't attack with lethal force. Instead, he knocks two of the cultists aside, clearing a path for Myra and Lilia. The prophet rages, calling for them to be captured, but the flames block half his followers. Myra and Kai half-carry Lilia away, stumbling over the rubble, their lungs filling with smoke. Behind them, the trapdoor inferno roars. The prophet's fury echoes across the yard, amplified by the wails of his people as they watch the precious seeds burn. Myra's heart breaks at the sight of her father's homestead engulfed in chaos. She had to do it. She had to sacrifice that stash to save Lilia, to keep them out of the prophet's hands. But it feels like part of her has died in those flames. She leans heavily against Kai, who's breathing hard. Lilia is barely conscious, moaning softly in pain. They run, not looking back, sprinting toward the edge of the property. Behind them, the prophet's voice rings out. "You fools," he shouts, coughing through the smoke. "You would doom yourselves to starvation rather than accept peace. So be it. We will find you. We will end this. No one defies me and lives long in this world." Myra's eyes burn with tears, some from the smoke, some from the crushing reality of what she's lost. Yet in her chest, a small defiant ember remains. The prophet thinks she destroyed all the seeds, but he doesn't know about the samples she gave to Kai. And he doesn't know that the vault contained more than what she stored in the trapdoor. If she can reach the original bunker, maybe she can salvage something else, though it's risky. Everything is in turmoil now. They keep running until they're certain the cult isn't directly on their heels. Lilia collapses, and Myra drapes her sister's arm over her shoulders, half carrying her onward. Eventually they find shelter in a ruined silo a few miles away, a place with vantage points in every direction. There they lay Lilia down. She's trembling, sweat pouring from her brow. Myra fumbles for water, letting Lilia sip a few drops. Kai breaks the silence, voice laced with both sorrow and admiration. "That was bold," he says. "I'm sorry you had to do that." Myra closes her eyes, seeing the flames again in her mind. "I hated it," she confesses. "But he would have taken them, or worse, used them as an example for others. I couldn't let that happen." She looks down at Lilia, who has passed out from exhaustion. "She's worth it. I'd burn the entire world if it meant saving her." A pause, but it still hurts to watch those seeds go up in smoke. Kai touches his pocket where he hid the small box. "We still have a few," he reminds her. "We can keep them safe. We might find another chance to plant them somewhere safer, or in smaller patches that the cult can't track." Myra nods grimly, grateful that not all is lost. "He won't stop hunting us," she says. "We humiliated him in front of his followers, and we destroyed a resource he wanted. He'll make us his priority." Kai swallows, glancing around the crumbling silo. "Where to now?" Myra runs a hand through her hair, thick with ash. "We could try heading north toward higher ground. They're rumored to be a place with less contamination, where water might be purer." She thinks of the original seed vault, wonders if she dares to go back there for more, but the prophet likely knows about it by now. "We need to focus on Lilia first," she says at last. "She won't survive a long journey in her current state." Kai glances at Lilia, brow furrowed with concern. "I'll search the area for anything we can use, herbs, old medical caches, anything that might help. You stay with her." He stands, wincing at the bruises he sustained during the fight, and slips out through a gap in the silo's crumbling wall. Myra sits beside her sister, cradling Lilia's head in her lap. She recalls the endless arguments she once had with her father about the nature of hope. He used to say that working the land was more than a profession. It was an act of defiance against emptiness. The prophet's ideology is the complete opposite. As she strokes Lilia's sweaty hair, Myra wonders where she finds the strength to keep defying him. Perhaps the strength comes precisely from the struggle. When faced with the dryness of the earth, you dig deeper for water. When faced with oppression, you push back harder to protect what you love. Somehow, that gives birth to a sense of purpose, a feeling that life isn't just random suffering but a challenge to be met head-on. Even if the outcome is uncertain, the act of striving might be its own reward. When Kai returns hours later, he carries a small bundle of medicinal herbs, some kind of antibiotic cream from a half-ransacked supply cabinet, and a few dried foods he scrounged. It's not a miracle cure, but it might be enough to keep Lilia stable. Myra helps him apply the cream to the infected spots on Lilia's skin. They brew a makeshift tea from the herbs, letting Lilia sip it slowly. Gradually, her fever seems to ebb. Myra feels a tentative hope blossom in her chest. She recognizes the cycle, sowing seeds, waiting to see if they'll sprout. Here, her sister's life is the seed. She can only nurture and wait. Days pass, filled with the slow work of nursing Lilia, scouting for supplies, and keeping watch for cult activity. Myra and Kai take turns standing guard atop the silo, scanning the horizon for any sign of robed figures. At night, the wind howls through the broken walls, a mournful lullaby. Lilia's condition improves incrementally. She is still weak, but at least her fever has subsided. She's able to speak, though her voice is faint. One evening, as Myra presses a damp cloth to her forehead, Lilia asks about the farm. Myra's stomach clenches. "It's gone," she admits quietly. They burned it, or we burned it, or both, all to keep it from the cult. Tears gather in Lilia's eyes, and she trembles with emotion. I'm so sorry, she whispers. Myra brushes a hand across her sister's cheek. Don't be, you're alive and we can still plant somewhere else. We have a few seeds left. She forces a small smile. Where there's a seed, there's hope. Lilia tries to return the smile, though it's weak. I remember father used to say that, she murmurs. He believed we could reclaim the land if we stayed strong. Myra's throat tightens. I believe it too. We just have to keep going, no matter what. Yet the next morning, Kai spots a small group of robed figures moving in their direction, and the uneasy calm shatters. The prophet is not among them, but these scouts clearly know where to look. They comb the area methodically as though they've been tipped off about the silo. Myra and Kai scramble to gather what they can. Lilia struggles to stand, leaning heavily on Myra. We need to move, Myra hisses, half supporting Lilia's weight. But before they can slip out a side entrance, the cultists converge. Gunshots ring out, ricocheting off the silo walls. They're pinned, forced to retreat deeper into the structure. I'll hold them off, Kai says, handing Lilia to Myra. You find a way out, lead her to safety. Myra balks, not wanting to leave him behind, but they have no choice. The cultists have them cornered. She nods, swallowing her fear. With Lilia leaning on her, she rushes down a dark corridor, hearing Kai's grunts and the clang of metal behind her. She finds a rusted ladder leading to an upper ledge. Carefully, painfully, they climb it. The air is thick with dust and tension. She can smell the acrid tang of fear. At the top, she spots a gap in the silo's roof. She wriggles through, half-hauling Lilia behind her. They scramble out onto the roof, the harsh sun blinding them momentarily. Gunshots below intensify, echoing off the concrete. Myra grabs Lilia's arm and edges along a precarious ledge, then lowers herself down the far side of the silo. It's a drop that would be dangerous if Lilia were healthy, but in her weakened state, it's perilous. Trust me, Myra whispers. Lilia nods, eyes wide. Together they manage to descend in small increments, landing hard in a heap of dust. Pain shoots through Myra's ankle, but she bites her lip and helps Lilia up. They limp away from the silo, circling wide. Shouts erupt behind them, presumably the cultists discovering their escape route. Myra's heart pounds, but she forces herself to keep moving, to focus on putting distance between them and their pursuers. She scans the horizon, hoping to see a sign of Kai. Nothing. She utters a silent prayer that he finds a way out. Eventually, they reach a shallow ravine where an old highway once ran. The cracked asphalt leads into a canyon of jagged rock formations. It's a dismal, foreboding path, but it offers cover. Myra helps Lilia along until they can go no farther. They collapse under the shade of a leaning boulder. Myra checks Lilia's pulse. It's racing, but steady. They have a small canteen of water left, which Lilia sips gratefully. What about Kai? Lilia whispers, fear in her eyes. Myra shakes her head, tears stinging her cheeks. I don't know, she admits, but he knew what was at stake. He'll catch up if he can. Right now, we have to keep going. She glances at the route ahead. It winds through the canyon, eventually rising into hills. We're heading north, she decides. We might find a place to start again. Lilia's eyes fill with tears. Start again, she repeats softly. Despite her exhaustion, there's a note of wonder in her voice, as if she can't quite believe they're not giving up. Myra gently presses a hand to her sister's cheek, nodding. She helps Lilia to her feet, and they resume their slow journey. Their supplies dwindle, the heat becomes merciless. Each step is an ordeal. Myra's ankle throbs where she twisted it, yet the stubborn drive in her heart refuses to let them collapse. She's not certain if the prophet is still actively hunting them, but the sense of being pursued never leaves her. Every shift of wind, every echo among the rocks might be a sign of cult scouts. In moments of quiet, she reflects on the seeds and wonders if she'll ever have the chance to plant them properly. Is this all just a futile chase, or can she genuinely impose life back onto this wasteland as she once imagined? After days of trudging, they stumble upon a small settlement nestled in the hills. It's little more than a cluster of makeshift huts, but Myra notices signs of cultivation, terraced slopes with stunted shrubs, small irrigation channels fed by a trickling spring. She and Lilia approach warily. The people here greet them with cautious curiosity, offering water when they see Lilia's weakened state. Myra is too exhausted to be suspicious. She accepts their hospitality, helping Lilia lie down in a shaded corner. The settlement's leader, an older woman named Irina, listens to Myra's story with a grave expression. You fled the cult, Irina says, glancing at the horizon as if expecting robed figures to descend at any moment. They've been to our settlement once before, trying to convert us. We turned them away. So far, they haven't returned. Myra marvels at the place. Despite the meager resources, it seems the people here have carved out a delicate harmony with their harsh surroundings. They grow a few herbs, gather water from a small spring. They wear expressions of quiet resilience that Myra finds heartening. She wonders if this is the kind of life-affirming struggle she's been fighting for. Over the following days, Lilia's health stabilizes again under the care of these settlers. Myra shares a handful of her seeds, explaining that they could potentially yield heartier crops. Irina's eyes light up at the mention of new seeds. If we can expand our terraces, she muses, we might grow enough to sustain more people, maybe even trade with nearby groups. Hope flickers through Myra's chest again, but it's tinged with the haunting memory of the prophet's wrath. She helps the settlers plant a small experimental patch, burying her seeds in carefully tilled soil, watering them from the precious spring. The act feels profoundly symbolic, a quiet assertion of life in the face of desolation. As her hands press the seeds into the ground, she remembers the flames devouring the canisters in her trapdoor. She remembers how devastated she felt. Yet now, with each seed pressed into cool earth, she senses the rebirth of her purpose. She's not content to merely survive anymore. She wants to overcome, to create, to shape the world rather than let it shape her. Weeks pass in this settlement, and the seeds begin to sprout. The settlers marvel at the potential. Lilia grows stronger, helping with small tasks around the terraces. Myra allows herself to imagine a future here, perhaps working side by side with these people to cultivate something real and lasting. She thinks of Kai often, hoping he escaped. She contemplates venturing back to search for him, but the settlement is in a precarious phase of establishing its new crops. She's reluctant to leave before she's certain they'll endure. Then one morning, as Myra inspects the sprouts, she hears a distant commotion. She rushes to the settlement's edge and sees a group approaching, a figure in front with a limp and dust-covered clothing, waving frantically. It's Kai. He looks worn and battered, but alive. Relief floods Myra. She rushes to meet him, helping him onto a makeshift bench. He gulps down water, eyes darting around. "They're coming," he gasps. "I led them away from you, but they found my trail. The cult, they're not far behind." Panic seizes the settlement. Irina and the others gather, fear etched on every face. Some of them want to scatter into the hills. Others propose standing their ground, fighting for what they've built. Myra feels the weight of the choice. Running means abandoning the crops and losing the momentum they've gained. Fighting means risking slaughter. But she recalls that the prophet thrives on the assumption that his enemies are too weak to resist. If they show him that they're willing to defend their growth, perhaps they can repel him. She gathers the settlers, speaking in a calm but urgent voice. "They want us to believe striving is pointless," she says. "But look at these green shoots. Look at the water we've shared, the terraces we've built. We are living proof that life can be reclaimed. If we run now, we let them destroy not only our crops, but our will. I say we stand and defend what we've created." It's a harrowing decision, but the settlers agree. They hastily fortify the settlement with crude barricades, strategic vantage points for their few hunting rifles. Myra organizes them, drawing on what she learned from her father about protecting livestock from predators. Now humans are the predators, but the principle is the same: ward them off, force them to reconsider an attack. Kai helps place sharp stakes around the perimeter, remembering some of the cult's tactics. Lilia, though still not fully healed, assists by delivering supplies and messages. Night falls, and with it comes a tense quiet. Then in the early dawn light, the cult arrives. They appear at the edge of the settlement, robed figures shimmering in the dusty haze. The prophet stands at the forefront, eyes narrowing at the sight of fortifications. He calls out, voice resonating. "You spurn our mercy yet again," he says, scanning the barricades. "Why must you prolong the suffering? We come to offer release." Irina stands atop a low wall. She doesn't speak. Her rifle rests in her arms, though she prays she won't have to fire it. The settlement's defenders watch with grim resolve. Myra stands beside Kai, armed with a makeshift spear. She can see the prophet's expression tighten when he spots her. "You survived," he says coldly, "and with you the seeds of illusion. Enough of this. We will cleanse this place. None shall remain to sow false hopes." He raises his hand. His followers advance. A volley of warning shots crack from the settlers' rifles, kicking up dust in front of the cultists. They hesitate, uncertain how many defenders are hidden behind the barricades. Then the prophet snarls a command, and the cult surges forward, guns firing, shouts echoing. The settlers brace themselves. Bullets ricochet off rocks, and a few tear through the flimsy walls. A man beside Myra cries out and collapses. Blood pools beneath him. Gritting her teeth, Myra hurls her spear at an advancing cultist, knocking him off his feet. She feels a vicious jolt of adrenaline, the savage clarity that comes when fighting for one's life. The prophet himself remains back, orchestrating the assault. Myra locks eyes with him across the chaos. She sees the hatred in his stare, laced with a hint of grudging respect that she's still defying him. She ducks as bullets whiz overhead, then crawls along a trench to flank the attackers. Kai does the same. The settlers rally, picking off cultists who charge recklessly. The prophet's zealots fire sporadically, more driven by fanaticism than discipline, yet they still have the advantage in numbers. Gradually, they push closer, using the terrain as cover. Myra's heart hammers. The sun climbs higher, turning the settlement into a furnace. Dust clouds swirl around them, and the clang of metal on metal mingles with the crack of gunfire. Screams slice through the air. She can't tell how many have fallen on each side. All she knows is that if the cult breaks through the barricade, they'll torch every living thing here, including the precious crops. Suddenly, a collective roar rises from the settlers. Irina leads a counterattack, surprising the cultists who thought the defenders would remain behind their walls. In a rush, the settlers swarm outward, brandishing improvised weapons. The cult line wavers. Myra seizes the chance to charge forward, spear in hand. She zeroes in on the prophet, who stands at a slight elevation, flanked by 2 guards. If she can reach him, perhaps the cult will break. The prophet's guards move to intercept, but Kai tackles one of them. Myra dodges the other, sliding in the dust and jabbing her spear upward. The guard howls as steel bites flesh. Then she locks eyes with the prophet. A tense silence seems to fall around them, though the battle still rages nearby. He draws a blade from his robe, a curved weapon that catches the sunlight. They circle each other. "It didn't have to come to this," he says, voice tinged with anger. "All of this bloodshed because you wouldn't let go of your illusions." Myra's chest heaves. "What good is a life without a will to improve it?" She fires back. "You gave up, and now you want everyone else to do the same. That's not peace, it's cowardice." He lunges. She parries clumsily, struggling to match his skill. He was once more than just a scientist. He must have learned how to fight in this broken world. She narrowly avoids a slash that would have opened her throat. Dust stings her eyes and sweat drips down her face. He swipes again, carving a line in her arm. Pain flares. She grits her teeth, thrusting her spear in response. He deflects it with his blade and knocks her back. She stumbles, nearly falling onto broken stones. "Your father taught you to farm," he sneers. "He never taught you how to kill." Myra snarls, blood trickling down her arm. "He taught me to fight for what matters." Gathering her strength, she lunges again, managing to land a shallow strike on his side. He gasps, momentarily stunned, but his fury is unbridled now. He charges, slamming her to the ground. She loses her spear, which skitters away in the dirt. He raises his blade for the killing blow, eyes wild with triumph. She braces for death, but in a flash, Kai appears, grabbing the prophet's arm. The blade comes down, missing Myra's throat by an inch. The prophet whips around, slashing Kai across the chest. Kai collapses with a cry. As the prophet turns back, ready to finish Myra, she scrambles, grabbing a shard of broken metal near her hand. With a desperate scream, she slams it into the prophet's leg. He howls, staggering backward. That moment of reprieve is all she needs. She scrambles to her feet, ignoring the burning pain in her arm. She lunges for her fallen spear. The prophet tries to recover, but she's faster now, driven by rage and desperation. She thrusts the spear forward, catching him in the shoulder. He drops his blade, roaring in agony. His eyes flash with something like disbelief. Then, in a swift motion, Myra twists the spear, forcing him to the ground. Panting, she presses the spear against his chest, ensuring he can't rise. Their eyes lock. The prophet's breath hitches with pain, but he still manages a bitter laugh. "Go ahead," he rasps. "Kill me, but you won't kill the emptiness in this world. You'll see." Myra's hands tremble on the spear. Adrenaline rages in her veins, urging her to finish him. The memory of what he's done, kidnapping Lilia, destroying her home, fuels her hate. Yet a small voice in the back of her mind whispers that killing out of revenge might entangle her in the same cycle of negation he perpetuates. She grits her teeth. "No," she says, drawing a shaky breath. "I won't murder you, I'm not like you, and I won't let you poison our chance at life any further." He stares at her, confusion and pain twisting his features. She looks around at the battlefield, where cultists either flee or lie wounded. The settlers stand victorious, injured but unbroken. Irina approaches with several armed villagers. They restrain the prophet, binding his hands. He is furious, spewing curses, claiming they're condemning the world to more misery. Myra steps back, retrieving her spear. She helps Kai, who groans, clutching the wound on his chest. Lilia rushes over, tears streaming as she presses cloth to Kai's injury. With the cult's retreat or capture, the settlement stands. This patch of green in the wasteland has survived. After the dust settles, Irina contemplates what to do with the captured prophet. Many demand execution, certain that he'll only bring more harm if allowed to live. But Myra, though she despises him, insists they don't stoop to his level. Instead, they lock him in an improvised cell, guarded night and day. He directs venomous glares at Myra whenever she passes. She meets his gaze with steady resolve, refusing to let him define her actions. Slowly, the settlement rebuilds, burying its dead, treating its wounded, and reinforcing defenses. Some cultists renounce the prophet's teachings, having seen the defenders' resolve and the partial success of these green shoots. Others cling to their beliefs but disband, drifting away into the desert. The settlement's new crops continue to grow, and the promise of food draws weary travelers seeking refuge. There's a sense of tentative optimism, fragile as the seedlings pushing through the soil. One afternoon, as Myra kneels by the thriving plants, she notices a single seedling that stands taller than the rest, leaves vibrant and thick. She traces its stem with a fingertip, recalling how easily it could have all been lost in flames. The memory of the vault, the canisters she discovered, flickers through her mind. With a renewed sense of wonder, she gently waters the plant. She can't suppress the joy she feels in nurturing this life. She remembers the words of Nietzsche she once heard paraphrased, that the true measure of greatness lies in the will to power, the drive to transcend hardship and transform reality. This living plant, this fragile shoot, is a testament to that will. Kai's wound heals with time, leaving a scar across his chest. He stands by Myra, observing the seedlings. "I never thought I'd see something like this again," he says quietly. An actual field, however small, in a land once deemed barren. He glances at Myra with admiration. "You showed me that the world isn't finished, that we can choose to shape it if we have the will." She smiles, resting a hand on his shoulder. "We're all shaping it," she replies. "No single person could do this alone. But yes, I suppose I took the first step by refusing to give in." Lilia joins them, still a bit frail but much improved. She kneels to pluck a weed from the rows of emerging crops. The three of them share a moment of quiet satisfaction. Nearby, Irina and the other settlers work diligently, constructing better irrigation channels, bolstering the water flow. The settlement hums with collective energy, an unspoken agreement that life is worth the struggle. Later that evening, rain clouds gather unexpectedly on the horizon, a rarity in this parched climate. Myra stands outside with the others, staring at the sky. The first drops patter against the dusty earth, releasing a petrichor fragrance that seems to awaken memories of long-lost greenery. People step out of their huts, gazing upward as the rain intensifies. Lilia laughs, letting the water soak her hair. Kai closes his eyes, as if in silent thanks. Myra spreads her arms wide, feeling the cool droplets across her skin. It's more than just a rainstorm. It's a renewal, a promise that their efforts might be echoed by nature itself. As the rain seeps into the soil, Myra wonders about the future. The prophet remains captive, still stewing in his bitterness, but his power has diminished. Perhaps in time he'll fade into obscurity, or maybe he'll remain a symbol of the mindset that denies life's potential. Either way, Myra senses that she has moved beyond his shadow. She has embraced a path of creation, no matter how difficult. And with every sprout that rises from the earth, with every droplet of water that nourishes the land, she feels her own capacity for greatness bloom. It's not about comfort or the absence of struggle. It's about the sheer vitality of facing each challenge, forging meaning in the crucible of adversity. That night, the settlement celebrates the rain. They hold a small gathering, sharing what little food they have, telling stories around a fire that sizzles and smokes in the drizzle. Myra sits beside Lilia and Kai, watching the embers dance. She thinks of her father, of the beliefs he instilled in her. She thinks of Nietzsche's notion of the will to power, not as brute force, but as the unyielding drive to grow, to overcome, to impose life onto chaos. She reflects on how her journey began simply as a means to survive, but it became something more, a refusal to let the world's collapse define her. Through fire, betrayal, sacrifice, and heartbreak, she discovered a path that transforms suffering into creation. In that sense, perhaps she finally understands what it means to love fate, to embrace it wholly and shape it by her own hand. She gazes into the darkness where the new crops stand beneath a gentle rain. A single seed can hold infinite potential, and one individual driven by purpose can spark a renewal that ripples outward. With that thought, Myra feels the pulse of life rising in her veins. For the first time in as long as she can remember, the future seems open. She closes her eyes, letting the rhythmic patter of rain soothe her. The seeds are safe, their growth unstoppable. The wasteland no longer feels like a tomb, but like a field waiting to be cultivated. In that quiet, shared moment, she recognizes the truth that has emerged from all her struggles. Happiness can be fleeting, contentment fragile, but the will to power endures. It's the raw determination to keep planting, to keep rising, to keep forging the world anew, no matter how many storms gather overhead. And for Myra, farm girl turned unlikely guardian of life, that is enough.